Everyone has a role to play as we face this challenge together.
Can you fly this plane and land it?
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
You're listening to The Review on the OSG Podcasting Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the COVID-19 episode of The Review. It is the OSG on CFB, college football. We talk college football week to week. We are the online sports guys, in case you're wondering. He is OSG Nelson. I am OSG Phil. And yeah, the sports world, she's a changing a little bit here, particularly over the last week or so, as the coronavirus has taken a hold in the world of sports. We all know about the changes with the NBA postponing their season and Major League Baseball postponing their season and the Final Four being postponed or canceled, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also had a little bit of an impact on college football. With the SEC basically saying no sports-related activity until mid-April, Ohio State and Michigan calling off their spring games as well. We're talking about a pretty long, quiet period here in college football, John, aren't we?
Yeah, Power 5 conferences, they're pretty much all locked out for a while. Initially, it was until April the 15th, but then with the new CDC guidelines that came out on Sunday evening, all gatherings 50 or more canceled for the next 8 weeks. That pretty much pushes everything to the middle of May. And you also look at recruiting face-to-face, either on campus or off. That's been pushed back. So understandably so, rightfully so, everything has been pushed to the side as you get ready for the 2020 season. But really, priorities need to be making sure that the hashtag of flatten the curve has made its way around, and that's where everybody's focus needs to be right now. Part of the other me's, the Football Fridays in Georgia podcast over at Georgia Public Broadcasting caught up with an athletics director in the Atlanta area, and there are a handful of ADs on the high school level who are in charge of all of the schools in their footprint. And this one particular athletic director that I talked to is in charge of 15 other high schools. And he's at the top of the ladder. Everyone's looking to him for guidance for everything going forward when it comes to spring sports and timetables and things like that. And the biggest thing that he just wanted to let everybody know when it comes to the administrative way of doing things is that don't be afraid to share ideas with folks if you have an idea when it comes to handling things in your workplace. And when you're looking at that kind of material, you're making sure that everyone's on the same page. He didn't have any timetables as to when things could be reinstated or when things were going to get started again. And that should not be the priority right now. The priority needs to be the student athlete, needs to make sure that the students themselves can, especially the ones that are having financial hardships in their families, make sure that they can get those square meals every single day. And that was one of the things that he wanted to get across, that he was really proud of his athletic directors that are under him and his fellow county ADs. So there's a lot more that needs to be focused on first and foremost, other than when someone's going to be having a recruiting visit, when someone's going to be sitting there and wondering about when the next game is going to be played. Everyone needs to be healthy first to get through this. Then you can figure out scheduling. And I know that Scott Van Pelt did a wonderful thing on SportsCenter this past weekend, with senior nights being pushed aside and senior performances and things like that. You don't know if it was going to be your last performance as a student athlete, and he wanted to make sure that folks got to share their senior nights and their senior years with everyone else on social media. And so it was a great thing. I would recommend going to Scott's Twitter account just to keep a good eye on those wholesome moments that we have to look back on and carry us through this difficult time.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think at least out of all the sports with the impact that this is having and the change that it's having, college football indirectly may be the least impacted, at least right now, just because they're not playing.
Right.
Yeah, if you're a coach, you're talking about missing practice time, you're missing your reps for the spring, you're missing your spring game activities and a chance to get an early look at what guys can do and what the newcomers can do in terms of learning the playbook and just how to play at this level. But at the same time, they're not really playing any games. So what really do you miss here? I mean, you're still talking about a season that, for all intents and purposes, more than likely will be able to kick off practice at the end of July, games at the end of August, beginning of September. Minimal impact, an inconvenience, sure. It's probably going to get some of those high-strung, can't sit still, got to be doing something, traveling all the time kind of coaches, make them go a little stir crazy. But for the rest of us, I'm not so sure this is such a horrible thing to have a quiet season for college football.
No, and at the same time, according to UGAsports.com, Bulldogs staffers have received a memo from the university detailing their new policy. As an example, if you've traveled, and this is the most relevant section according to our friends at UGAsports.com, quote, if you've traveled anywhere outside the United States over spring break, you must not, in all capital letters, return to a UGA campus or facility. Anyone who has traveled internationally in the past 14 days, and this came out a couple days ago as you and I are talking, must self-quarantine until you've been asymptomatic for a period of 14 days from the date of entering/re-entering the United States. And AD Greg McGarity confirmed to UGA Sports that applies to all employees, and that, yes, that did include coaches. So that's just part of the discussion right there. Nice, great prudence from Greg McGarity there.
Yeah, and I think it's something that most schools, if they're not following suit, will be shortly. Most of them really aren't doing much. They're not allowing their coaches, they're not allowing players to do much. Heck, quite a few schools still missed out on their pro days for kids that were eligible for the NFL draft this season.
Yeah.
And again, like I said earlier, I don't know how bad of a thing this is. College football has become a year-round sport, a year-round event. They're recruiting nonstop, relentlessly, and maybe it's a chance for some of these coaches to catch their breath and maybe have a life outside of being in a football team all the time.
Wait, what? Wait, have a life? What is
Yeah.
this that you're referring to? Coaches and lives?
There are a few other things going on in college football. Some interesting things in the transfer portal. We would be derelict in our duty if we didn't talk about guys looking to enhance their futures at other locations. And probably one of the bigger names to make the move here of recent note, Oklahoma Sooners running back Trey Sermon announced that he was entering the portal and leaving Oklahoma. Rumor is he may land at Ohio State, but that's not confirmed yet at this point in time. Sermon got some playing time, ran for 13 touchdowns in 2018 and was one of the leading rushers for the Sooners in 2017 and 2018. But after getting hurt in 2019, he didn't play that much.
Nope. 19 starts in all, a product of Sprayberry High School here in the CFB on OSG footprint. And when you have Kennedy Brooks, who's going to be starting for Oklahoma, then you have Ramondre Stevenson, TJ Pledger as a part of it. I can guarantee you, yeah, I know that Ohio State is looking for someone of Trey Sermon's talent level. And I can also guarantee you that there are a couple of schools in the Southeastern Conference who'd like to have Trey come and play a little closer to home to help out their offenses as well. And I can name two off the top of my head, one in our footprint and the other next door to our footprint. So Trey Sermon, he's now at the top of the ladder when it comes to desired talent in the talent pool when it comes to portaling. But understand Trey's decision, coming off a year of injury, and you feel like you're not going to be the number one guy. So what the portal is once again now in Norman, Oklahoma, Trey Sermon now at the top of the ladder. Interesting to see what the process is going to be to figure out who gets Trey Sermon's services for his senior year.
Yeah, couple other kind of nuggets here over the course of the week. Army Navy going to Orlando?
Yeah, the Camping World Stadium wants to add to their portfolio. And according to the Orlando Sentinel last week, the head of the group that controls that stadium, yeah, he'd love to have it. And the Sentinel caught up with Florida Citrus Sports CEO Steve Hogan, Army Navy game. Good luck in getting it away from the Northeast and getting it from Philadelphia or Baltimore, because that's where it really needs to be.
Yeah.
But it's you get where Hogan's coming from, but I really don't hold a whole lot of credence to them getting to the front of the line. It's gone back and forth between the Link and M&T. MetLife is scheduled to host it in 2021. But right now, I think that Orlando would be a distant fourth in trying to get that game. And if you add MetLife to the mix, so I've got to say that Camping World is a distant fourth when it comes to getting this game.
I mean, I guess as Ted DiBiase once said in professional wrestling, everybody has their price.
Yeah.
And so many games in college football have been relocated just because somebody's willing to pony up a back up a Brinks truck.
Yep.
To get them to come, to get the game to come and relocate to another location. But this would just be so wrong on so many levels.
Yeah.
More than I can describe. There are certain things that are just traditions assumed in part of the college football history and lore. That's definitely one of them.
Yeah, it is.
Not only is it a game played basically on its own week after the conference championships, it's just a big spectacle. And having both of those service academies not that far from the Philadelphia, New Jersey area makes it easy for them to get there via travel. Getting to Orlando is not so easy.
No, but I can guarantee you that Hogan would probably find a way to subsidize it and put everybody on a JetBlue plane or something like that to get them down to Orlando. I'm sure that all the connections and all of the advertising that you could get working in that one direction, all of the sponsorships that could get everything down to Orlando, I'm sure that could happen, no doubt. I'm sure that all Hogan would have to do is make a couple of phone calls to grocery store chain, airport, airplane, airline, all those different elements that you could piece it together and it would happen. You look at the history of it. I think it was at Soldier Field once. I think it was at the Rose Bowl once. It's for me, it has been Philadelphia, Baltimore. I want to see what it looks like at MetLife. But for me, it's always been those two cities. And it's a long road to hoe if you're going to try to get that down to Orlando. As easy as it would be to piece together, I think that the history of the game itself ties itself to being in those two cities.
Yeah, cool thing happened in college football this week as well is we found out who would be going to the College Football Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Some interesting names in this group, including Eric Dickerson, Steve McNair, David Pollock, formerly of University of Georgia and currently ESPN analyst. Bunch of talented players. Lomas Brown from Ohio State, Keith Byers from Michigan. Guys who run the litany of college football. Heck, even Elmo Wright, who, if you don't know who he was, is a receiver who played for the Kansas City Chiefs and a few other teams back in the early 70s. Super talented receiver. And coaches Dick Sheridan there and Andy Talley among those as well. 17 guys in all. A litany of players running the gamut here of known quantities over the last couple of decades and some guys from history.
Yeah, Jumbo Elliott out of Michigan is a part of it. For those of you that like your offensive lineman, Eric Crouch from Nebraska, the quarterback from 98 to 2001. Jason Hanson, giving kickers a little love because you need to do that. Jason Hanson from his time at Washington State. E.J. Henderson, who was a dominant ACC linebacker at the University of Maryland. E.J. Jr., who was at Alabama, had a career in the pros. Cade McNown, Leslie O'Neal, Michael Westbrook from Colorado. So a lot of great names. So, all right, so here's the rundown. 6 unanimous first-team All-Americans, 8 consensus All-Americans, 5 major award winners, 2 national title winners. 10 of the 17 won Conference Player of the Year honors representing their playing careers going as far back as the 1960s. So that was very, very cool.
And a couple of Heisman Trophy winners, too, including Crouch, who, for those of you unfamiliar, was one heck of a college football quarterback at Nebraska in the late 1990s, early 2000s, and ran for over 3,000 yards and passed for over 4,000 yards, and really probably was the last time Nebraska was relevant in the college football conversation.
True.
Never got much of a shake in the pros. Tried, didn't make it, came back at playing a couple of different positions, still no success. And really kind of one of the many reasons why I don't put much credence into a quarterback winning a Heisman Trophy when it comes to college football.
Yeah.
And the other guy that I think is long overdue for the honor is Steve McNair, who passed away in 2009. McNair was just absolutely dominantly fantastic in the early 90s. Went to Alcorn State. 16,800 total yards of offense in 4 seasons. That is absurd.
Yep. In a past life when I was in syndicated programming, one of the best half-hour shows that I was ever privileged to do was one on Steve. And it was during that run, really, I think that he should have finished higher in the Heisman Trophy race than he did that particular season. And I know I'm putting you to sleep, so I apologize for that.
Sorry about that.
But drove to Birmingham, Alabama, and it was the lead up for the regular season finale against Samford. And he was fighting a cold, something fierce. But he, his brother Fred, and his coach at the time could not have been any more welcoming. And, we were there at the hotel, sat down, did a great, 10, 12-minute sit down with him, another handful of minutes with both his coach and his brother. And in the game against Samford on campus, they were down 18 points, I want to say, halfway through the third quarter, and Steve was he was still sick as a dog, and he was having one of his worst days as a pro, but then as a college player, and then he absolutely buckled down and had a comeback for the ages for Alcorn to beat Samford in a shootout at Samford and continue their run toward having an undefeated season and Steve's run toward a Heisman Trophy. So one of the very, very cool stories that I got to do with Steve during his senior year at Alcorn State.
Gotta love that. He went on to have a pretty successful career as quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. Beloved athlete up there in Nashville area, and taken away from us way, 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 way too soon.
No doubt.
What do you say we wrap things up here on the first block of the show? Got to take a little bit of a breather so we can kind of catch our breaths.
Yep.
We come back here in a little over a minute. We're going to talk about some more problems for the folks at Michigan State as the Mel Tuckett era is ushered in under a veil of accusations, hints, allegations, and things left unsaid, to quote a musical album title.
Yeah.
That and more when we come back with a review here on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
Enjoy all of our shows from the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. The OSG Sports app is up and running. Download it today.
Soccer Down Here is sponsored by Apolinski & Associates, LLC, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience. Call Steve Apolinski at 518-350-4231 or email him at steve@aa-legal.com if you need help with a wrongful death or serious injury matter. Steve Apolinski is rated one of the top 100 trial attorneys in Georgia, recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend magazine for being one of the most effective lawyers in Georgia.
If you want to scale a mountain, buy boots. If you want to turn your crush into something more, say hi. At Country Financial, we know protecting the things you love and preparing for tomorrow start with simple steps. So we help you take small steps today with insurance and financial services that can have a big impact on your family's future.
For all your home, auto, and life insurance needs, call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871.
Thanks for sticking around, everybody. You are listening to The Review. It is the OSG Sports team talking college football in the offseason. And lately, the topic of conversation when it comes to teams in trouble centers around the Michigan State Spartans. Former coach Mark D'Antonio, who left the program at I wouldn't say an inopportune time, but a curious time.
Here come the posse.
Arguably running away before the trouble actually bubbled up to the surface. There's been a slew of allegations by former Michigan State recruiting director Curtis Blackwell, including the newest lawsuit in state court, claiming that Michigan State videotape practices of an opposing team and that Blackwell was required to do so by D'Antonio.
Yes. Dan Murphy at ESPN and also MLive.com and Wolverine's Wire, a couple of different places for you to do your research. But here's the short version from Dan Murphy. Alleges a future opponent in a different state before a game. Suit was filed in state court. Claims he was discriminated against before his race. Added current AD Bill Beekman at Michigan State as a defendant, saying Beekman defamed him when he called Blackwell's other claims made against Michigan State patently false back in February, and the claims against D'Antonio reading directly from the lawsuit. Defendant D'Antonio mandated that plaintiff, as a condition of his employment on defendant D'Antonio's football staff, either engage in or be complicit in defendant D'Antonio's violation of A, NCAA rules by requiring plaintiff to make off-campus visits to recruits, particularly to their homes. B, Title IX regarding the recruitment and admission into MSU of Austin Robertson. C, the civil and or criminal laws of another state by making or directing his staff members to make and distribute an audio or video recording of another person, i.e. a competing football team's practices, and that's what we were talking about just now, without consent and the intent to invade their privacy. D, NCAA rules and other laws by soliciting the improper benefits to the family members of recruits. And E, NCAA rules by contacting football players enrolled at other NCAA universities for the purpose of recruiting them to transfer to Michigan State. So at Dan Murphy, ESPN is your follow, among other places there.
Where do you start?
Well, I was going to say, I think that
we haven't gotten a chance to talk about a program in trouble in a long time.
Yeah.
And maybe this isn't the end of the world, a Baylor level event.
But still, I mean, if
a ton of question marks here.
Yeah, well, I mean, Wokey and I pretty much had figured out that the timing of Mark D'Antonio retiring from Michigan State was somewhat interesting. And the prevailing idea was that the posse was coming. And so we think it's best, Mr. D'Antonio, if you retire. Yeah. So basically, I think that's, what you're looking at here with the lawsuit that's being put forth and the other information and the amendment to the lawsuit being put forth by Curtis. And once again, your required reading, MLive, Wolverine's Wire, Dan Murphy, ESPN. This is more than just the fine kettle of fish. It's larger than the fine barrel of fish. This could be the whole frickin' aquarium at this point when it comes to the fish that Michigan State's having to deal with.
Which makes it even more interesting to me because they just rolled out a ton of money for Mel Tucker and
they did.
His assistant coaches. And the potential exists for basically buying yourself a new head coach and staff at a high price for basically nothing, for probation, for not being eligible to win a championship or conference championship.
All right.
I don't consider Michigan State a team anymore that can compete on the level of, definitely on the level of an Ohio State, and arguably not on the level of a Michigan anymore.
No.
They had some success under D'Antonio. He won a good amount of games, probably a few games that he shouldn't, but I'm not so sure that the Spartans didn't peak a couple of years ago.
Yeah. All right. So base salaries, this was an open records request, once again, by our friends at M Live. Mel Tucker contractually allowed by Michigan State $6 million for his assistant coaches. And and the 10 coaches that the open records request was fulfilled on or yielded information for, they total $5.8 million. So if you wanted to be the running back coach for Mel Tucker at Michigan State, you would be making six figures. You'd be making $200,000 in the current administration. If you were the offensive coordinator, you would be making just under $1 million a year. You have 1, 2, 3, 4. The defensive coordinator making just under that amount. So basically, your two top coordinators are making just under $1 million a year. But when it comes to making over $500,000, including those two coordinators, you're looking at 6 of the 10 assistant coaches making $500,000 or more at Michigan State. So good money if you can get it in East Lansing, and right now you kind of wonder what it's leaning toward, especially with the current activity that's being alleged.
A lot to wrap your head around, I guess, and a bigger subject of conversation for us, partially in this off season where there's not a whole lot going on.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that.
Anything else in your back pocket that you want to talk about here before we wrap things up on the show?
Yeah, here are some rather emphatic words of wisdom from a particular coach in the Southeastern Conference that have to do with what's going on today with what we have to handle.
For every winning team, a key to success is learn the playbook. That's true in football, and it's also true as we take on the coronavirus. The spread of the coronavirus is a serious matter, but there's a game plan for keeping residents as safe as possible. Everyone has a role to play as we face this challenge together. Cover your cough with your elbow like this. Wash your hands thoroughly, a full 20 seconds. If you're sick, stay home. If you think you should be tested, phone your health provider first. Avoid close contact with anyone who's sick. Protect your at-risk family members, including the elderly. If you're not at risk, take care as you go about your daily business. Get the facts now from coronavirus.gov and your state health department. We're all in this together. Let's team up to protect our health.
Oh, thank you, Coach.
I think that if given the opportunity, if Ed Orgeron was in the same squared circle, was in the octagon with anybody, you will listen. And you will listen to what he has to say. This, once again, it's a great idea from the state of Louisiana, putting one of your most beloved people at the forefront of messaging for what's going on. So fantastic idea by the state of Louisiana to put Ed Orgeron out there to discuss the current state of affairs. Great idea. So thumbs up, John Bell Edwards.
Anything with Coach O talking is going to get your attention. Yes. I love the fact that they were willing to do this.
Yeah.
Great idea. Much applause.
Yes, much applause. No doubt.
I think with that, maybe we should put a bow on it and wrap up this episode of the show. Those of you listening at home, you have been listening to the review. Those of you watching at home or on your phone on our YouTube channel, you have been watching the review here on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. Don't forget, we've got social media. We are everywhere at OSG Sports. You name the platform. Look up OSG Sports. You'll find our logo. Hopefully not our pictures. Well, you might. But I guess that's a whole other conversation.
You don't want that.
And don't forget, if you want some reading entertainment, check out our website, theonlinesportsguys.com. For OSG Nelson, I am OSG Phil. You have been listening to the review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. Have a great week, everybody.
The Online Sports Guys would love to hear from you. Go to our Twitter page at OSG Sports for a comment, rant, or just whatever's on your mind about college football.